Have you ever felt like debt is this invisible weight, quietly suffocating your confidence, your decisions, and even your sleep? What if I told you that an ancient philosophy, over 2,000 years old, holds a practical, step-by-step path, not just to escaping debt, but to achieving lasting financial freedom? The truth is, most people think the answer lies in more income. But here's the twist. Many high earners still drown in debt. Why? Because they haven't mastered the internal discipline required to break the cycle. And that's where Stoicism quietly changes the game. I'm Saul, and in today's journey, I'm going to show you exactly how the same philosophy that guided Roman emperors and philosophers can guide you, yes you, out of financial despair and into clarity, strength, and freedom. But first, let me open a loop you'll want to hear to the end. One of the greatest Stoic thinkers was actually born a slave. Yet his teachings later helped shape the financial strategies of modern billionaires. His mindset might be the very thing that frees you from your financial struggles too. So let's start with the first core Stoic principle that radically changes your relationship with debt: brutal honesty. Epictetus, the philosopher I just mentioned, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you're in debt, it's tempting to blame your job, the economy, or even past mistakes. But Stoicism teaches us to take radical responsibility. Not blame, responsibility. The moment you stop outsourcing your circumstances and start owning them completely, you regain control. Now here's the surprising truth. This first shift, though internal, often sparks external change. I've personally seen people go from spiraling further into debt to building wealth simply because they stopped saying, "I'm stuck," and started asking, "What's the next best move I can make today?" And this leads us to the next Stoic tool, clarity through journaling. If you're in debt right now, this is one of the most underrated, powerful actions you can take. Every evening, grab a notebook and write down 3 things. 1. What unnecessary expense did I make today, and what emotion triggered it? 2. What was one small win in managing my money today? 3. What can I do tomorrow to improve by just 1%? It sounds simple, but this reflection rewires your brain for financial awareness. You stop reacting and start responding. You catch patterns. Maybe it's emotional spending after stress or shopping to impress others, and then you course correct. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Once you begin tracking your behavior, the next Stoic practice becomes easier: voluntary discomfort. Seneca, another Stoic master, was one of the wealthiest men of his time, and yet he frequently chose to live as if he were poor, eating simple meals, sleeping on the floor, wearing basic clothes. Why? Because he believed practicing poverty trained the mind to stop fearing it. Now you might ask, how does that apply to your debt situation? Here's how. When you voluntarily simplify your lifestyle, even just for a few days a month, you break your psychological dependence on comfort and appearances. That daily $5 coffee, that subscription you barely use, suddenly they don't feel essential anymore. You build resilience. You learn that you can live with less and still feel empowered. And let me tell you, when you gain that kind of control, you begin redirecting money toward your debt aggressively. And more importantly, you start believing, "I can do this." But let's go even deeper. Debt isn't just numbers on paper. It's psychological. It's emotional. It creates anxiety, shame, paralysis. But Stoicism teaches that emotions are signals, not commands. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So when you feel overwhelmed by your debt, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling right now? And is it helping or hurting my next decision?" Because the goal isn't just to pay off debt. It's to become the kind of person who never feels enslaved by it again. But this brings us to the question no one talks about. What if you're doing everything right, but your progress feels painfully slow? How do you stay committed when the numbers barely move? I'm going to answer that in a way that might surprise you, by showing you a Stoic secret used by elite athletes, top CEOs, and even NASA mission teams to maintain focus in the face of long-term goals. And trust me, it's the mindset shift that could carry you across the finish line. The Stoic secret I mentioned is something called zooming out. It's the practice of stepping back mentally to see the bigger picture, especially when your day-to-day progress feels invisible. Think about this. If you're deep in debt, your daily decisions might feel like drops in a bucket. But zooming out reveals something else entirely. It reveals that consistent, aligned action over time is the most powerful force in personal finance. Just like erosion carves through mountains, small actions, repeated daily, can wipe out even the most crushing debt. Here's a practical example. A client I once worked with, let's call her Maya, was buried under £30,000 of credit card debt. Every time she looked at the balance, she froze. But after learning this Stoic practice, she stopped obsessing over the total. Instead, she focused on just one thing she could control each day. No spending on wants, journaling her triggers, and paying even £10 extra toward the smallest balance. Within 2 years, her debt was gone. Not because of magic, because she zoomed out, stayed calm, and took action daily. But now let me introduce you to something even more interesting. Something most people completely ignore when trying to escape debt: identity. You see, Stoicism isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And that applies perfectly to financial habits. If you see yourself as someone who's always bad with money, you'll unconsciously sabotage your progress. But if you shift your identity to "I'm someone who makes powerful, intentional financial decisions," everything changes. Your debt becomes a temporary condition, not a permanent identity. And here's where gratitude, surprisingly, plays a role. When you start feeling grateful, even while in debt, not for the debt, but for the lessons, the discipline, the focus, you start to feel powerful again. You realize, I'm not powerless, I'm rebuilding, I'm growing stronger. Now I know what you're thinking. This all sounds good, but what about the real concrete actions? What should you actually be doing? Here's a step-by-step, Stoic-inspired debt plan. Anyone can start today. Step 1. Radical financial clarity. Write down every debt you owe, amount, interest rate, minimum payment. Don't flinch. Face the truth head on. Remember, what you don't track, you can't change. Step 2. Eliminate shame. Replace it with action. Shame keeps you stuck. But action, even small action, creates momentum. Step 3. Simplify. Cut unnecessary spending ruthlessly, not as punishment, but as power. Practice what Seneca did. Find joy in living below your means because it accelerates your journey to freedom. Step 4. Automate your debt payoff. Even if it's small, set a recurring payment you don't have to think about. Make your progress inevitable, not optional. Step 5. Protect your mindset. Start each day with a Stoic reflection. Ask yourself, what's one choice I'll make today that my future self will thank me for? And that's where we tie it all together. The Stoic path out of debt isn't about spreadsheets or financial gurus. It's about emotional mastery, daily discipline, and choosing to become the kind of person who lives with intention. It's about living below your means, not because you're forced to, but because you've learned to value freedom more than appearances. You won't just pay off debt, you'll build unshakable self-trust. So let me ask you a question that only you can answer. Are you willing to trade short-term comfort for long-term freedom? Because once you do, you'll experience something most people never do. Not just zero debt, but true peace of mind. You'll go from being someone burdened by money to someone empowered by it. From chasing quick fixes to building a financial legacy. From financial stress to financial sovereignty. And it all starts with a decision you make today. Not next month, not once the timing feels perfect. Right now. The Stoics taught us that we always have power in the present. And if you embrace that, if you apply these ancient principles to your modern reality, you'll look back months from now and barely recognize the person you used to be. Because freedom isn't a finish line, it's a mindset. And once you adopt it, you'll never settle for anything less.